Greetings. If you've never seen one of my videos before, I have a neurological condition called cerebral palsy, which confines me to a wheelchair and affects the way I move and speak. I also am heavily tattooed and wear unusual jewelry. If any of that offends, shocks, or terrifies you, either grow a spine or be a good little jellyfish and float away quietly. Today, what I want to talk about is the ways in which South Africa as a country could be better. Now, before I list what I think, I'm under no illusion that this will actually happen, and given the unrepentant greed of South Africa's political elites, I'm almost entirely certain that it won't happen for their sake. But nonetheless, I have thoughts about this and I want to share them. The first thing that needs to be done if South Africa is to turn around and become a functional and prosperous nation again is that our education system needs to be totally overhauled with a focus on legitimate academic achievement and knowledge instead of inflated pass marks at the end of each year. The Department of Education is now more concerned with having high matric pass rates published in newspapers than they are with whether or not the students actually understand the subject matter of what they have been taught. What this leads to is people then entering either tertiary education or the job market with a complete lack of any capacity to think for themselves. And if you can't think for yourself, life is going to be very difficult for you because life, as we all know, is full of surprises, especially in this country. I graduated from high school in 2008, and that was at the time when the South African Department of Education was just beginning to relax the standards of what would be considered an acceptable matric pass rate. Well, not just matric, but all grades, really. And this has had a disastrous downstream effect because if someone doesn't get a good formative start in their education, they are going to struggle all the more as an adult to achieve things. The second big thing that would need to change for South Africa to have a positive turnaround is that broad based black economic empowerment legislation would need to be abolished. Now, before any of you in the comments throw a hissy fit, I am not about to justify the denial of equal opportunity to jobs that was done to non-white South Africans under apartheid. Even though I think that BE should be abolished, I still realize that because black people are the dominant ethnic group in South Africa, the majority of jobs, whether high paying, medium paying, or low paying, should still go to them. This is not me demanding a job or playing the role of the poor, embattled white. But I think it's clear now that all broad-based black economic empowerment has done is to lower the standards of work ethic in South Africa and to enable nepotism and corruption on a grand scale. Think about why almost every government institution in this country is either bankrupt or near to it. It's essentially because the legislation as it currently stands forces the meeting of numerical quotas rather than meritocratic hiring based on skill and knowledge. And what this does is it has a downstream effect where if all you care about is what the person looks like and not the kind of work they can do, all organizations running on that model will eventually fail, as unfortunately we are now seeing. We also, if we are to have any hope as a country, need to stop taking moral advice from politicians. People like Jacob Zuma and Julius Malema are indeed charismatic speakers who can command the attention of thousands of people. But unless the average South African, black, white, or anything in between, realizes that these people exist to support their own agendas and their own agendas only, we'll never get anywhere. Because if your vote can be bought with some fancy words, a t-shirt, and a food parcel every 4 years, then the status quo will never change and nothing will ever improve. We also need to realize that people of different races, no matter how much the politicians try to imply or outright state, are not the enemy. Yes, we have disagreements and we don't always see eye to eye. But unless you have the money to leave South Africa and move somewhere where everyone thinks and acts exactly like you do, we have to make it work. Because if we don't, everyone suffers. Another element of South African society that needs to be completely overhauled is how people think of the family structure. Every time I hear that there has been a strike called over a pay dispute, when I read about these things, it always boils down to one thing. The people on strike say that they need more money because they've got 5 kids and a wife to support, and they've got nieces and nephews and extended family of all kinds that rely on them. This is often referred to in South Africa as the black tax. Now, it's not going to be popular for me to say this, but the fact is, the black tax is largely self imposed. If you want your children to have a better future than you had as a child, then what you need to do is only have the number of children that you can feasibly support. Because right now, what we have in South Africa is vast generations of children being born into lives with no hope of a proper education, no hope of gainful employment, and no hope of a meaningful existence going forward. And I don't wish that on anyone. I am not longing for a return to the days when South Africa was under white rule. I just want everybody to get a fair shot at a decent life. Anyway, that's all I've got to say about that. And for now, farewell.